Welcome to Power Lunch Live. I'm Rhett Power, your host. It's good to be back with you after almost a 2 week break. After about 200 shows or so, we took a couple-week break. Had our first show back yesterday. It's good to be back on the air consistently daily here around noon. And today is going to be a pretty moving, I think, show. I think we're going to talk about adversity. We're going to talk about how you face that as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a leader, and how do you get through that? And we've got two very compelling guests today who've written a book. We're going to talk about that. But the whole point of Power Lunch Live is to bring on today's thought leaders, best-selling authors, people who are doing amazing work in the world that we can learn from. Now, the whole fun part about that is that it's interactive. So if you have questions from our guest or about our guest, or you have a question for them, whatever that looks like, do get on and ask that question and put it in the chat. We monitor every place that we're broadcasting, which is obviously LinkedIn, but also Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and I think one or two other places that I never remember. My teenagers probably could, but I don't. Anyway, it's good to be with you. Today, we're going to be talking about the secret to living a fantastic business life. I've got Dr. Alan Lycka and Harriet Tinka with me today. And their stories are just absolutely compelling. Dr. Lycka is an acknowledged, is a leading dermatologist, one of the leading dermatologists or cosmetic dermatologists in the world. He's a pioneer in cosmetic surgery. He's helped develop new technologies. He's spoken all over the world. He's written several books, co-authored a book, I can't speak either, co-authored a book with Jack Canfield. And Harriet is an entrepreneur. She's a chartered professional accountant, a football official. We got to talk about that a little bit today. She's an ultra marathon runner, and she is founder and CEO of the award-winning social enterprise Empower Me Inc. Guys, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you.
Oh, we are happy to be here. Thank you for having us today.
Yeah, Rhett, it really is our privilege to be here. And thank you for considering us for your world-class show.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate that. You guys have, to me, two very compelling stories. And so I want to first start out with those stories and sort of set the stage for how you guys came together to write a book about business and about how to lead a fantastic life. I think that that's a good starting point. Dr. Lycka, do you want to start?
Sure, let me take you back a little bit. I'm going to take you to 2003. It was spring break. I was walking with my wife and my youngest daughter in Disneyland, the happiest place on earth.
And you're on top of the world, right? You're top of your field. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, good. You know, my wife turned to me at the end of this day and she literally said, "Hun, what's wrong with you?" You know, Rhett, you're married, and when your wife asks you what's wrong with you, you know, you better answer. And, you know, for once in my life, I hadn't said anything wrong. I hadn't done anything wrong. I hadn't even thunk anything wrong. So I was taken a little bit aback. And I said, "Mean, dear, I didn't do anything wrong." She said, "Listen to your foot." I said, "Dear, what the heck do you mean?" She said, "Listen to." Well, right foot had mysteriously and suddenly developed a foot drop. You know, when you're walking, Rhett, your brain is programmed to lift up your foot with every step you take. It's automatic. But my foot wasn't. It was slapping on the pavement with each step I was taking. So out of concern, she said, "Did you have a stroke?" And I said, "Dear, you're a doctor. I'm a doctor. That's not how a stroke presents." Well, she said, "When you get back, you better get this checked out." Rhett, when your wife tells you to get something checked out, what do?
Okay.
You get it checked out.
Yeah.
So, like a good boy, I got it checked out. I saw hundreds of doctors. You know, they did CAT scans. They did brain scans. They did PET scans. They did scans. And you know what they saw at the end of the day?
Nothing.
Nothing. And you know when doctors do nothing, what they do?
No, but you're going to tell me.
They do more tests and more tests and more tests. They invent tests. In fact, I had tests that probably don't even exist yet in 2020, but I had $1 billion workup. And at the end of the day, I ended up on the doorstep of a world-leading neurologist. Now, a neurologist is a brain doctor. They have all the answers to all the picture. You know, they are the guy. So I walked in and I said, hi. He said, hi. You better be sitting down when I tell you this. And I said, what do you mean sitting down? I have a dropped right foot. He said, no, you don't. You have ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. Get your affairs in order. In 6 months, you're going to be dead.
Wow.
Okay. Well, that hit me like a ton of bricks. And I shot back at him. Can you prove this diagnosis? Well, he's a neurologist. He has all the answers, of course. So he said, of course, on autopsy.
Wow.
Okay. So I shot back at him. I'm not going to die to prove you wrong. But you know, Rhett, when you go through something like this, when you go through a tremendous loss, you go through a period of grieving. You go through anger. You're angry at everything. You can bite the head off nails.
Mm-hmm.
You go through bargaining. Oh God, please don't let this happen. I'll do anything if you don't let this happen. You know, bargaining.
Right.
You go through denial. There's nothing wrong. I can do anything. But you know, in your heart of hearts, there is something wrong. You have a dropped right foot. There's something wrong. Something's growing.
So you believed it?
Well, I knew something was happening. I didn't know what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
I had a diagnosis of ALS, but I didn't believe that diagnosis for one iota. There's no way. There's no way I had this diagnosis. Just because I had symptoms of it didn't mean I had it. You know, just because it barks like a dog and quacks like a dog, a duck, doesn't mean it's a duck. It can be something else. And in medicine, as a doctor, I know we're often wrong. I know we look for things and try to put things in a nice little pigeonhole, but they don't often work that way. Medicine is often gray. It's not black and white. We don't have all the answers. And just look for an example at COVID. COVID came on the scene 6 months ago. We still do not know COVID very well. We do not know anything about COVID. We're learning every day, but we don't know about it. We're trying to react, but we don't know about it. We are understanding more every day as we're living through it. But we're also going through this grieving reaction. We're going through anger. Look at what's going on in the world right now. Yeah. We're going through craziness with anger. We're going through bargaining. Don't let this happen. We'll do anything if it doesn't happen. We're going through denial. I'm not going to wear a damn mask. This thing isn't going to get me. I'm superhuman. No way. But the worst part of all this, and this is what every entrepreneur needs to look at, Rhett, is depression. Because in depression, the world is black. It doesn't matter what you do. No matter what happens, you do isn't going to make one iota of difference. Now that's bullshit. The truth of the matter is it's all about what you do. It's not what happens to you. It's what you do with what happens. And I want everybody to take that message right now, because that's what our book's about. Now, what happened to me next is I went to my wife and I said, what do I have? She said, I haven't got the faintest idea. You know, I really don't know. But you're a doctor. You're smart. You can figure it out. You figured out worse than this. I said, dear, thanks for the vote of confidence. She said, well, figure it out. So you know what I did next, Rhett? Was very interesting. back in 2003, something new was invented. You might have heard about it. It's called the internet. You ever hear of that beast?
No, there's rumors.
Well, let me introduce you to it. You know, back in 2003, it was a primitive beast. You might have had it. You had to get on with a dial-on connection. Your phone had to phone a phone in someplace else, and it would go ria, ria, ria for about 15 minutes. And finally, when you connected, you could get on. But you didn't have the ability to get onto a search engine. They didn't exist then. So you had to look for individual sites. Now, fortunately, I had nerds that were friends, and they knew more about the internet than I did. And they found sites for me. And they found a doctor in Colorado Springs, Colorado, by the name of David Martz. David had a disease very similar to mine. But David got much worse, much more rapidly. And he was on his deathbed. But he was such a well-known doctor that people from around the world were coming to see him. So they came up to say goodbye to David. And one doctor came up from Texas, and he looked at David and said, David, I think there's something wrong with this picture. And David said, what do you mean something's wrong with this picture? He said, I don't think you have ALS. I don't think you have Lou Gehrig's disease. Well, David whispered, because that's all he could do at that time. What do I have? The doctor from Texas said, I think you were bitten by a tick. I think you have something called chronic Lyme's disease. Now, chronic Lyme's disease is a great mimicker. It mimics everything. So it looks like ALS, but it's not ALS. David said, so how do we prove this diagnosis? The doctor said, you know, we can do a simple blood test and send it off. But he said, I'm not going to wait. It might be too late. I'm going to start you on treatment. We're going to do a trial of treatment. David said, well, what do I have to lose? I'm dying. So he started on treatment, and a miracle happened, Rhett. Like Lazarus, he arose from the dead. Within 2 weeks, he was back to normal.
Wow.
So, you know, that's where I knew I had to get in touch with David, because David had some pieces to the puzzle that I did not have. Now, I'm a doctor, so I knew how to get in touch with him. I phoned every hospital in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And I got in touch with David at the Methodist Hospital. I had no idea he would be at the Methodist Hospital, but all I said to all those hospitals was, hi, I'm Dr. Lycka. I'm looking for Dr. David Martz. Can you get me in touch? And they put me in touch. And I talked to David. And David said, you know, this is a very interesting story. Can you come down and see me? He told me he had started a clinic treating people with this weird disease. He had over 2,000 people he was treating. Wow, I said. So I said, when do you want to see me? He said, right now. I said, David, I live in Canada. He said, what's the problem? I said, well, it's Thanksgiving in Canada. My wife has 50 people over. She said, well, she can handle it. You know, aren't there any planes in Canada?
Right.
He wasn't going to put up with my excuses. So I went to my wife and I apologized. And she said, of course you must go. If this is going to help you, get on a plane. So I got on a plane. I flew from Edmonton to Denver. Great flight, 3 hours long, fantastic. Then I got on a plane from from Denver to Colorado Springs. A real puddle jumper, Rhett. If you travel like you do, you've been on puddle jumpers. This was a puddle jumper. And you know what it's like at the end of the day? It is the worst flight in the world, because the air is coming off the desert and it is creating eddies. And that plane climbs and it drops. It climbs and it drops. It goes up 100 feet and drops 200 feet. It goes up 200 feet and drops 400 feet. It's like the drop of doom at Disneyland over and over and over again. Have you been on that?
I have been on that flight.
It is terrible. It is absolutely terrible. Well, I crawled off that plane. I was green, as you can imagine. And when I got off that plane, there was David on the tarmac to meet me. This was 2003, Rhett. There was no high security. There was no problems like we have now with security on top of security. He was there to meet me. He was a well-known doctor. He was we meeting a guest. No problem. He drove his truck on the tarmac, and there was meeting me. So we went and talked, and he told me some magic words, Rhett, that history is repeating itself. And he started me on treatment, and I was able to maintain my status as a top cosmetic doctor for over 30 years. But you know, when you go through this, Rhett, your life changes. You realize you can live a better life. You realize there's things you missed along the way. You realize there were some amazing things that you really need to pay attention to, and you should change your life for the better. And along the way, I met this amazing woman called Harriet Tinka, this beautiful, gorgeous woman that's right next to me in this scene. And I'm sure you have one or two questions, Rhett, before we turn it over to her. But then we'll turn it over to her and we'll talk about how we came about writing our book.
I do. So you have to, I mean, again, you were at the top of your game here. You're a top surgeon. Now, when you get an ALS diagnosis, my assumption is you have to report that, or you have to say to a medical board or somebody that I've been given this diagnosis and I can't practice anymore. I mean, so
well, I did have to report it because, you know, part of the thing is self-reporting your illnesses. And I did tell them that I'd been diagnosed as this. But then, you know, I was a talented surgeon, Rhett. I was very talented. My right hand became affected, so I was not able to do everything with my right hand. But, you know, I became left-handed, and my left hand is even better than my right hand. So I became one of the first left-handed surgeons in the world. You know, left-handed surgeons, according to surgeons, are evil because they didn't even have equipment back then to cut. You know, there's such a thing as left-handed scissors, right?
right.
Well, we didn't
I
have
have two
them.
left-handed kids, so yeah, I know what you mean.
So I had to invent left-handed scissors. I had to invent all the tools I was using. I really had to reinvent the field of cosmetic surgery. But you know, I had an amazing team around me, and my team allowed me to do things. I was a skin cancer doctor as well, and I did 10,000 operations of a type of operation called Mohs micrographic surgery. So I really did some amazing things. Mohs micrographic surgery treats skin cancers. And, you know, I take off people's noses and put them back on again. I take off these huge, ugly cancers and recreate them. But I was a cosmetic doctor. I helped to make the field of liposuction surgery what it is today. And I was also a laser surgeon in which I would take real bad burn survivors and make their scars disappear. So the College of Physicians and Surgeons in my area was happy to have me as a top cosmetic doctor. They wanted to keep me around because I was talented. Yeah. But you know, I had to relearn everything. It's like after a stroke where you have to relearn everything. It's everything else. But I found there were even things more important than surgery. I found that there was something called golden pearls in people's lives that everybody needs to concentrate on. So not only did I remake my surgical career, I remade myself in light of these things.
How so?
Well, you know, when you go through something that's devastating like I went through, Rhett, you either become mean, you become egocentric, you become somebody that takes everything to myself. I didn't. I looked around and said, how can I give back? How can I give the world a better thing? How can I make the world a better place than it's in? And I think that's what people need to be in this day and age, Rhett. I lived when I was a cosmetic doctor through about 10 recessions. And at the end of every recession, I was able to make my business better and even much better than it was. I had to reinvent myself every time. Mm-hmm. And this process of reinvention is what I did at a masterful level when I was given the diagnosis of ALS. And that's what people have to realize, is that we are given a tremendous gift right now in this COVID virus. This is a masterful reshaping of the world. We have been given one of the best gifts that we could ever do. We have the opportunity to make the world a better place right now. We have the opportunity to make the world so much better than it was before we went in. It's unbelievable. But we've got to grasp on that, Rhett. We have to really look at this as a gift. And we've got to look at what the world should be like and how we want to reshape it, how we really want to make this world the place we want it to be, because we have that ability now. We have this tremendous, and you, of all people, Rhett, traveling the globe, being in Brazil, being in the States, seeing all these businesses, seeing all this, I think you can see the power of this phase. This phase is unbelievable in what it does. It is unmistakable of what's going on right now. This is truly a gift. It's up to us whether we seize it as a gift or mess it up. You know, back in the early 1980s, there was an oil bumper in Canada. Oh, God, give me another oil boom this time and I won't piss it away. You know, and we pissed it away. We pissed it away several times after that. You know, don't piss this one away. This is an important one. This is one where we have the ability to make the world a better place, so much better than we went in. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, this is one of those transformational moments. I completely agree. Harriet, I got to bring you on to the conversation. And I want to know, I mean, I talk about this journey for you, because I think, I mean, you just got, aside from the trauma and the story, you're an amazing entrepreneur in your own right. And I mean, you've done some amazing work, and you're an amazing athlete and person, and you're living this life of purpose. But talk about that traumatic moment and what you went through and how that shaped you into who you are.
Oh, you bet. I'm happy to share my story. And even today, it's still surreal for me to believe that I'm a domestic violence survivor. Here I was, an international model. I was walking the runways. I was full of confidence, yet I was a victim of a stalker. Now, my story really begins when I had just decided to retire from the modeling industry, and I decided to get a formal education. So I went to university, I enrolled, and it was just at the university where I met this fellow student whom I had absolutely no idea that his attraction to me was like a psychological trap disguised as love, but later on would end up being deadly. And I was your typical domestic victim of abuse. I was young, naive, and I had no idea of the patterns or the signs of an abusive relationship. And yet I was vulnerable enough to trust him. And he was just your typical friend. You know, he was always there for me. He cared. But then later on, he started being abusive. He would yell and scream, hit me, and then he would apologize later on. So I thought it was okay because he apologized. But this went on and on and on. And it was just too much. It was affecting my whole entire life that I decided I was going to report it to the police. So I went to the police and I told them what was happening, but they said there's absolutely nothing they could do unless something happens. The only thing they could offer me was a restraining order, which would prevent the accuser, the stalker, from coming near me. So that's what a restraining order is. So I took that and I thought, oh, since I have it, this is great. He was going to stay away from me. So I went back to my regular life, and one evening I was busy preparing for my project that was due in a few weeks, studying, and I looked at the time and it was late at night. So I said, oh, I better get ready to go back home and get some rest. So I put my bags and I went to my apartment building, which was only about 5 minutes from the university. And I got into the elevator, but I wasn't even paying attention to my surrounding. So I walked into the elevator just looking for the keys in my handbag. And in the back of the elevator, I felt somebody squish my neck really tight. And I had a voice in the back saying, "How dare you get this restraining order against me? Don't you know that I'm the only man who will ever love you? I have unconditional love for you." And when he said that, I started to scream. And he was so nervous that I was screaming, he didn't want anybody to hear me. So he took his shoes off really quickly, took his socks off and tied it into a little ball and stuffed it right in my mouth so that I can stop screaming. And then he grabbed me out of the elevator and he pushed me into his vehicle. So we started driving. And as we're driving, of course, he's yelling and screaming and saying, "How dare I do this to him?" And he's asking all sorts of questions. "Are you seeing somebody?" It was very controlling. I wasn't supposed to see anybody. So as he's saying that, I'm just ignoring him. I'm just pretending I'm not affected by it. And he got even more angry. So we kept driving and he saw a telephone booth and neither one of us had a phone at the time. So he said, "You need to get out of this vehicle and go call your parents and say goodbye to them because this is the last time that they'll ever hear from you." And I looked at him and I said, "No." And he said, "Okay, I'm going to repeat that one more time. I need you to get out of this car, go call your parents and say goodbye to them. Because in the back of the car, I have a rope, a knife, and gasoline. I am going to wrap your body up with this rope, cut your body in pieces, and put gasoline all over you. Now, are you willing to go call your parents?" I looked at him again and I said, "No." So that second no was even worse because he got even more angry. So he reached over the glove compartment, opened it up, took a knife, and he stabbed me twice on my left leg. So there was blood gushing everywhere. And even today, really, I have absolutely no idea how I got from that point where I was in the vehicle to the hospital. But when I woke up, there was the doctor and my father in the room. And in the waiting room, there was the police and there was media all waiting to talk to me. So the doctor told my father that the stab wound was so bad, I had lost a lot of blood, and chances are I might never walk again. So when he told me that, I was absolutely shocked because I thought, not too long ago, I was on the runway walking, full of confidence. And now I was a cripple and I was depressed. The only thing that separated the two, my confidence and depression, was really my trauma. So I started feeling sorry for myself. Why me? How could this happen? You know, you go through the phases similar to what Dr. Lycka mentioned. You start, go through denial and you say, why? How could this happen? And it took me a long time to even try to think of what to do. Like, what can I do? I feel so lost. I feel hopeless. So the doctor recommended perhaps I should start having a physiotherapy to learn how to walk, see if that would work. So I decided, okay, I'll try it. Why not? I got nothing to lose. It was one afternoon, I was in the waiting room and a little girl came in on a wheelchair full of so much joy. And I said to myself, oh, I don't want to talk to her. I hope she doesn't talk to me. Anyway, eventually she did. She was very tenacious. She would not leave me alone. So she asked me why I was there and why I had crutches. And I said, well, I was going through physio. And I explained to her, I told her my story in a version that a 9-year-old could understand. So when she listened to my story, she said, oh, wow, you should really share your story with the world. And I thought to myself, why a 9-year-old? Where did she get such wisdom? So as I got to know her, she said in their family, they always talked about stories and they always said, use your story to impact the world. So it was, for her, it was just a statement, go share your story with the world, because she really liked my story. And I asked her why she had so much joy, because she was in a wheelchair and she was so excited and she was in the hospital. So she said that she was in a car accident. And what had happened, her parents were excited. She was going to go for a ballet recital competition. And they were all excited. They were driving and there was a red light. Another driver came in and hit the vehicle, head-on collision. So both her parents had died. So she was homeless, motherless, and fatherless. And yet she had so much joy. and I asked her where she exuded so much joy. She told me that she was very grateful because she knows that her parents would want her to continue living, and that's what she was doing. So when I heard her story, I thought, oh my goodness, my story is nothing compared to hers. But really, life is not about comparing stories. It's about what you do with what happens. So I started going through my physio, I started healing. It took me almost 2 years to go through it. And I started connecting the dots. I remembered what the little girl had said as I got better. And I said, okay, I need to do something with my life. I became very innovative and I opened up my own business called Empowered Me. So it was about empowering young women and young girls to be the truest version of themselves, to get over what they were going through, to love themselves unconditionally. And in the community, there was an event called the YWCA, which is an organization that really, what it was doing, it was celebrating women in the community. There was trailblazers, there was astronauts, there was different women in the community who had done something. So they were being recognized at this event. And Dr. Lycka was the biggest sponsor of the event because he was a philanthropist giving back to the community. So somebody had nominated me to be I was one of the nominees under the category called Turning Point. And what that category was what you had done with your life to make a difference in the community. And there's quite a few women under that category. Fortunately for me, I was the recipient of that award. And I was so excited. I got this award. And it was such a big deal because everybody there had made an impact. And I feel sorry for the judges to decide who was going to win. But I was excited. I won, and I got an opportunity to meet the sponsor, which was Dr. Lycka. And I asked him if he would mind meeting me for lunch. I even offered to pay, and I did. And we met for lunch, and I shared my story. He also shared his story. So it was there, and that was almost 6 years ago when we said perhaps we should write a book. And that's what we wrote the book, The Secrets to Living a Fantastic Life, with 13 golden pearls that we've discovered. And here we are today.
And Rhett, this is how the Odd Couple got together, but it's been a collaboration that's been amazing. This is Ebony and I'm Ivory, and the two of us together have really partnered in such a way that it's almost unbelievable. You know, there's so many differences, yet so many similarities in this book. It's really so. Although our stories are so different, they are the same because the end point is the same. And the information we'd like to impress on all your listeners out there, it's not what happens to you, it's really what you do with what happens. I really have to emphasize that to no end. Now, that's from a sophist by the name of Epictetus, who invented that saying over 2,000 years ago. Now, he was a slave that became a free man. So picture what he had to go through to get to where he is. And since that time, there are innumerable people that have said the saying. But our book has captured that. In our book, there is a story that leads off each chapter. And the story is meant to be almost like a parable to give it extra meaning. And then there's this dynamic dialogue between Harriet and I that we put in our book as we were writing it. So you're like a fly on the wall reading our book. So you get to eavesdrop on our conversation. And then we've sprinkled this with quotations from over 150 authors that have thought on these topics. So these are the world's authorities on that. So they're like raisins in an oatmeal cookie. They're like chocolate chips in your baking that just bring it to an extra level. So when a person reads our book, they have to reread it, because there's so many pearls in there that people need. But it's based on 13 primary pearls of wisdom. Now, we didn't start with 13 pearls. We started with 20. And Harriet, tell them why we had to change that a bit.
it was overkill because we had so many golden pearls. And most people said, well, we really like all 20, but perhaps just trim them down to a reasonable number. So we decided, okay, 13 is an ideal number. And it became what it is today. So we'll do the others. Book number 2.
seems to me that it's one of these things where, you were talking about how you read it over again and over again, and it seems like at different times in your life and different points, those turning points, as you sort of characterize it, that you need something different each time you read it, right? You're looking
Yes.
and that's what that book gives you. It gives you something different every time you read it, because you need something different.
Well, at different turning points in our life, we need different touchstones to help make us better.
Right.
And in fact, right now, it's almost a weekly thing. So we like to give all of your listeners a gift. We have put together something that's rather unique, and we'd like to give your guests 52 golden pearls. So
Wow.
what we've done is all they have to text us the word golden pearls, 2 separate words, golden pearls, second word with an S, to 1-819-717-2515. That's 1-819-717.
I'm going to put it up. So do it real. I'm going to type it in. So give it to me. Text.
Yeah. 1-819-717-2515. Golden pearls. And we'll send you golden pearls every week. On Tuesday morning, you will get your golden pearl. And this week's golden pearl, for example, was about vulnerability, which was really one that I needed this week, because it was just after a long weekend and I needed my brain to be reshaped. And I was feeling vulnerable on Tuesday morning, because here it was, September, and I hadn't done everything I was supposed to do. And so here's our vulnerability, a golden pearl from this week. Vulnerability. Vulnerability is basically uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. That's from Brené Brown, the goddess of vulnerability. And, vulnerability is what makes it all happen, Rhett. You have to be vulnerable in order to move forward. Without vulnerability, you do not move forward. Like Harriet is one of these crazy women that run these ultra marathons, these 5-day death races in her bare feet. So, in order for her to win, she has to be vulnerable. She has to put it all on the line. Otherwise, she would never win. And that's what I'm telling you, all your entrepreneurs out there, that in order to win, you must be vulnerable. Even though you hated it, even though you hate that phase, you must be vulnerable, because that's where your power is. That's where you succeed. That's where you win more than anything else. And I've got to put that to your listeners out there, that vulnerability is truly your secret sauce, your success quotient, because vulnerability is what makes it happen.
All right. So I can't walk and chew gum at the same time, and talking and typing is not my strong suit. So give me that text real slow. I've got 1-819. Is that that's as far as I got it.
Yeah. Harriet, why don't you say it slower than I do?
Oh, you bet. Yeah. So it's 1-819.
Yep.
717.
717. Got it.
2515.
2515. That is going to go for your weekly golden nuggets.
And golden pearls, by the way, golden pearls, because pearls are really more important. And there's a story behind pearls, and I want Harriet to tell it to you, why we did pearls rather than nuggets. I wanted nuggets as well, by the way, but Harriet corrected me.
Yeah, I told him it sounded almost like food, saying golden nuggets, because I thought, ooh. So what I told him is, ever since I was a little girl, I've always wanted to have golden pearls, and I always admired my mother wearing them. So I said that's exactly what we should have, because it's so, and there's a story behind how they're formed, and Dr. Lycka can share that.
Yeah, pearls are rather unique things, Rhett. They actually exist in nature. And do you know what forms a pearl?
Isn't it pressure?
No, it's trauma to the side to an oyster. What happens is a little grain of sand gets into that oyster, and it makes the pearl form, because the oyster hates that irritation. It hates that trauma. So what it does is walls off that little grain of sand and makes this beautiful, exquisite thing. Golden pearls actually exist in the South Pacific, in Indonesia and the Philippines area, but they're so exquisitely rare. A single solitary pearl costs upwards of $10,000.
Right.
So we wanted people to understand that pearls actually exist inside their body. Because of the trauma, they make these beautiful things. And these pearls are so exquisitely rare and beautiful that everybody can grasp them inside their body and make the world a better place. Now, we have 13 of them. We start with love and we end with empowerment. Now, love is one of the primary things that makes us who we are. We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for our mothers loving us. And you can find people that weren't actually loved by their mother, and you can actually see that. How do you do that?
You can tell by the way they treat themselves and how they treat others. So that kind of reflects on how they were brought up. So love, and there's 7 different types of loves that we identified in the book. And for me, the one that I can identify with is the one that's obsessive love. That's not healthy. So we also talk about that in the book. So many different types of love, and we're only gonna we're gonna let the readers read the rest.
Yeah, you got to get
suspense.
The book. There's 7 different types of love, and you got to really savor over those. These were invented by the ancient Greeks as well. They're very important ones. And self-love is probably the most important love that you can have, because without self-love, we do not move forward. But love is a very important concept, but also so is empowerment. Harriet is the master of empowerment. So I'm going to get her to say a couple of words on that.
Yeah, so when you talk about empowerment, we're really focusing on the emotional intelligence. And really it's focusing about all the self series that we know about, that things like self-awareness, self-reflection, self-love, self-respect. So all of those self series, that's all empowerment. And it's a big thing to do when you're going through what we're going through right now. And the Golden Pearl, the empowerment is actually, it's a journey towards that. One of the things that I really would like to focus on is the purpose. Because if you know your purpose, your intention, it will make empowerment that much easier to gain. So for example, purpose being one of the golden pearls, it's golden pearl number 5. And in the book, we talk about what is called ikigai, which is a Japanese word for reason for being. So when you're trying to go through, especially now with COVID, most of us have been in isolation, we've been in quarantine. So the biggest thing that most people are doing is trying to ask themselves, what is my reason for being? So when you're going through that, in the book, we recommend 4 questions you can ask of yourself. Number 1, what is it that you love to do? Maybe you love playing football. It can be your referee, but that it does not necessarily mean that you want to be a football player. Perhaps it means you want a career that has that team focus, a competitive edge. So that's number 1. What is it that you love to do? Number 2, what is it that you're good at? Sometimes we don't know what we're good at. It's best to ask your friends, because you may have done something for them and they say, oh, I know that Harriet is really good at this. I asked her to do it. She's really good. You could be a good listener. You could be good, like for yourself, you could be a podcaster, or you could be a psychologist, or if you're good with numbers like I am, you could be an accountant. So that's the number 2. What is it that you're good at? Number 3, what does the community need? Look around. What are the gaps that are missing? A lot of the companies have been very innovative right now. They've seen where the gaps are, and some are thriving during this COVID because they've looked at the community and they've realized what is it that's missing. So same thing as you're going through the ikigai, what is it that the community needs that your skill set can offer? And now, and the very last question is, what can you do and get paid for it? Because you want to be compensated for what you're doing. So those are the 4 questions. What is it that you love to do? What are you good at? What does the community need? And what can you do and get paid for it? So when you go through those 4 questions, you have found your ikigai.
I love it, and I hate to cut off the conversation, but we have I have to cut off here. We have a show coming up at the top of the hour, and
Okay.
the book is called The Secret to Living a Fantastic Life with Harriet Tinka and Dr. Alan Lycka. Highly recommend you guys take a look at it and read. And you can pick that up on Amazon. And in fact, we'll put it in the feed to this show to make that easy on you to do. And do text 1-899-717-2515 for your weekly Golden Pearls. This is Power Lunch Live. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back at the top of the hour. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for having us.